Have you ever wondered how some wealthy people continue making money even when they are sleeping? It may sound like a secret reserved for millionaires, but the basic idea is actually quite simple. Most people work for money. They exchange their time and skills for a paycheck. But wealthy people often try to build something different. They use a portion of their income to buy or build assets that can potentially generate more income over time. Stocks, businesses, real estate, bonds, and other investments can become part of this strategy. The goal isn't simply to make more money. The goal is to create a system where your money has the potential to keep working even when you aren't actively working. And that's one of the biggest differences between simply earning money and building wealth. Let's start with the difference between earned income and investment income. If you work a regular job, you usually receive a salary or hourly wage. You work a certain number of hours, and your employer pays you for that work. But there is an important limitation. Your time is limited. There are only 24 hours in a day, and you can't work every minute of them. Investment income works differently. When you own an asset, that asset may potentially produce income or increase in value over time. For example, stocks can potentially pay dividends and appreciate in value. Rental properties can potentially generate rental income. A business can potentially produce profits for its owners. This doesn't mean these investments are guaranteed to make money. They all involve risk. But the important idea is that assets can potentially generate economic value without requiring you to personally work every hour. One of the most common ways people try to make their money work for them is through investing. Stocks represent ownership in companies. When you buy a stock, you're essentially buying a small piece of a business. Some companies may pay dividends to shareholders, and if the company grows successfully, its stock price may also increase over time. Another popular option is an ETF, or exchange-traded fund. An ETF can hold a collection of different investments, which can make diversification easier. For example, instead of investing in just one company, an investor might choose a broad market ETF that holds many companies. But remember, investing isn't a guaranteed path to wealth. Markets can fall, individual companies can fail, and past performance doesn't guarantee future results. That's why long-term thinking, diversification, and understanding risk are so important. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful concepts in finance: compound growth. Imagine you invest money and earn a return. Instead of spending that return, you leave it invested. Now your original money and your previous returns can potentially generate additional returns. Over many years, this process can become increasingly powerful. Think about a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it may be very small, but as it continues rolling, it can collect more snow and become larger. Compound growth works in a similar way. The biggest advantage is often not a magical investment. It's time. The longer money remains invested and the more consistently returns are reinvested, the greater the potential effect of compounding. That's why starting early can be so valuable. Even relatively small contributions can potentially become meaningful over long periods. Real estate is another asset class that many investors use to build wealth. For example, someone might purchase a rental property and lease it to tenants. If the property generates more rental income than its ongoing expenses, the owner may have positive cash flow. At the same time, the property could potentially increase in value over the long term. But real estate isn't automatically passive or risk-free. There can be maintenance costs, taxes, insurance, vacancies, repairs, financing costs, and changes in property values. Successful real estate investing requires careful research. The key idea is that a properly managed property can potentially become an income-producing asset. Instead of simply spending money on things that lose value, an investor may choose to put some money into assets that have the potential to produce income or appreciate over time. Another major source of wealth is business ownership. Think about the difference between working for a company and owning part of a company. An employee generally receives compensation for their work. A business owner can potentially benefit from the profits and growth of the business. This is one reason entrepreneurship can create significant wealth. But owning a business also involves substantial risk. Businesses can fail, revenue can fall. Expenses can increase. Competition can become stronger. Successful entrepreneurs usually focus on creating products or services that solve real problems for customers. And when a business becomes profitable, the owner may choose to reinvest those profits into growing the company. That's another example of money being put to work. Another concept often associated with wealth building is having multiple sources of income. Imagine someone who depends entirely on one paycheck. If that paycheck suddenly disappears, their financial situation could change immediately. Now imagine someone who has a salary, investment income, rental income, and income from a business. They may have more than one source of cash flow. Of course, having multiple income streams doesn't automatically make someone wealthy, and building several income sources takes time. But diversification can potentially reduce dependence on a single source of income. The important point is to build these sources carefully. Don't chase every trend promising quick money. Instead, focus on understanding how each income source works, what risks it carries, and whether it fits your financial goals. Here's another habit that can make a major difference. Reinvesting. Imagine you receive income from an investment. You have two choices. You can spend all of it immediately, or you can use some of it to purchase additional assets. When you repeatedly reinvest a portion of your profits, your asset base can potentially grow. And as your asset base grows, it may generate more income. That income can then be reinvested again. This creates a cycle. Earn. Invest. Grow. Reinvest. Repeat. This is not a get-rich-quick strategy. It requires patience, discipline, and the ability to think long-term. Wealth is often built through consistent decisions repeated over many years rather than one lucky investment. Let's put everything together. The wealth building cycle can be surprisingly simple. First, earn income. Second, control your spending and save a portion. Third, invest that money into assets that match your goals and risk tolerance. Fourth, allow those assets time to potentially grow. Fifth, reinvest some of the income or gains. And finally, repeat the process. This doesn't mean you should invest every dollar you earn. You still need money for everyday expenses, emergencies, and your personal goals, and before making major investment decisions. It's important to understand your own financial situation and the risks involved. The goal is balance. You don't want your money sitting completely idle, but you also don't want to take risks you can't afford. So, how do rich people make their money work while they sleep? The answer isn't a secret stock. It isn't a magic formula, and it certainly isn't guaranteed passive income. The basic principle is building assets that have the potential to produce income or grow in value over time. Instead of asking only, how can I earn more money? Start thinking about another question. How can I use some of the money I earn to build assets for my future? Because your paycheck pays you for your work, but assets have the potential to keep working long after you've finished working for the day. The journey to financial independence usually doesn't happen overnight. It happens through knowledge, discipline, patience, and consistent decisions. So remember this simple formula: earn, save, invest, grow, reinvest, repeat. And the earlier you understand this concept, the more time you potentially give your money to work for you. Thanks for watching. If you found this video useful, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who wants to learn more about building wealth.